This morning, Sunday, August 24th, we began worship in the courtyard just out there, as we do every Sunday that we can in the summer. And things were going along fine, except it got gray all of a sudden, and an unexpected rain shower came in and sent us scurrying in here into the chapel. Just about the time the sermon was getting going, so amazingly we were able to keep the live stream going throughout, and we just resumed here starting the sermon. All of that video is online, but there were enough technical glitches that I thought maybe I would just come in this evening and record the sermon by itself, make a video for you so that you could see the sermon in one piece without any technical glitches. It starts like this. Shabbat Shalom. I mean that as a warm wish for you, wishing you peace, joy, and friendship, hoping you have a great day today, Sunday, the Christian Sabbath. The funny thing is, I grew up with a lot of friends who were Jewish, and their Jewish identity was important to them, and because of that, I learned from them that the Jewish Sabbath starts on Friday at sundown and runs until Saturday at sundown. But it wasn't because my friends were observing the Sabbath. None of them were religious. They were Jewish kind of the way I was Episcopalian. I knew I was Episcopalian because the Episcopal Church was the church that my family didn't go to when we didn't go to church, and that was nearly all the time, which I guess makes us very Episcopalian. I heard my Jewish friends talk about how the High Holy Days were the days when their families bought tickets to attend synagogue services and then didn't go. And I never heard any of them say Shabbat Shalom to each other or to me or to anybody else. These days, if I am in touch with a Jewish friend on a Friday afternoon, I am quite likely to be greeted with the words Shabbat Shalom, and I return the wish in all sincerity. My Jewish friends here in Buffalo are a lot like the kids I grew up with in Chicago, and some of my friends that I grew up with in Chicago have become more religious as adults, kind of the way my friends are here in Buffalo. I wonder if my Buffalo friends were less religious when they were kids, like my friends in Chicago. In any case, it delights me to be greeted that way, because over the years, I have come to understand the idea of Sabbath as a profound part of my spirituality and theology. Part of my understanding comes from a contemporary Jewish understanding of the Sabbath related to the Jewish ethic of the obligation to repair the world. The Hebrew phrase for it is tikkun olam. In the same way God spent 6 days working to create the world, we are obligated to spend 6 days of the week working to repair the world. But we are also to remember that God, looking back on 6 days of work, saw that it was good, very good, and was satisfied. We too should remember that that what God made is very good, and give thanks for it, even if there is still work to be done tomorrow. In that spirit, I experience the idea of Sabbath as a day of freedom, which is really different from typical old school religious teaching about keeping the Sabbath holy. Remember blue laws? It seems like the people who were really serious about religion put a lot of restrictions on what you could and could not do on the Sabbath. You couldn't buy alcohol, you couldn't go to the movies, or do a lot of other fun things. Perhaps it was to protect the liquor store employees' Sabbath rest. But there was a huge judgmental streak in there, even if that were true, and I doubt that. That huge judgmental streak was certainly there, frowning on pleasure because it takes your mind off of God. You know, in every religious tradition, someone will always take the role of enforcer, and they'll see it as their sacred duty to enforce something for the good of everybody else. Or is it just that they have, as Anne Lamott says of herself, they have teeny tiny control needs? Is it just that they see religion as a way to gain for themselves the power to control everything, a power that they attribute to God? As they see it, the way to be on the right side of that power equation is to become God's enforcer. Once you start down that road, it leads straight to today's gospel story of liberation. Yes, I mean the story of Jesus arguing with the synagogue leader about working on the Sabbath. Except it isn't really about that. Certainly, the synagogue leader was nitpicking Jesus about doing the work of curing on the Sabbath. But Jesus didn't say to the woman who had been so oppressed by her sickness, "Be cured." He said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." Be released, he said. Be liberated. And liberation is what the Sabbath is all about. Part of the struggle we have to repair the world is the struggle for economic justice, the struggle to manage our lives together so that no one takes unfair advantage of the hard work of others. And throughout history, people with wealth and power have villainized or demonized others to make it easier to force them to work without fair compensation or without respect for their dignity as human beings. In this little story that just seems to be like one more healing miracle, Jesus saw this woman who had been sick for a long time, which meant she was not young. And we know that women become invisible to society as they age, and all people become invisible to society when they are disabled. And in this case, she was quite literally demonized by those around her who attributed her illness to being possessed by a spirit, and not a good spirit. Jesus saw her. She wasn't invisible to him, and he called to her. Think of all the other miracle stories of men who call out to Jesus to be healed. Jesus saw this woman and called her over to him and said, "Woman, you are free of your infirmity." He laid his hands on her, and immediately she stood up. She stood up straight. She thought about God and began thanking God for her healing. That sounds like liberation. That sounds like Sabbath to me. Pleasure had not been keeping her from thinking about God, just the opposite. And as soon as she could stand up straight, her thoughts went straight to God, to thanking God. So 2 quick thoughts and I'm done. In the first reading, we heard the prophet Isaiah sharing the word of God, who said specifically that if we care for the hungry and afflicted, God will be with us and our world will be wonderful. And then, kind of abruptly, God seems to switch topics and to get all wound up about honoring the Sabbath, and says that by not pursuing our own ways, seeking our own pleasure, or speaking our own words, we will find happiness in God. Maybe that's where the clever people who created the blue laws got their ideas. So where do I get this idea that the Sabbath is about freedom? Isaiah seems to hear God saying we are not free to pursue our own ways, or seek our own pleasure, or speak our own words on the Sabbath. But remember this: the Sabbath is our chance to think of how God saw that everything in creation is good. Everyone in creation is good. Good and made in the image of God. The Sabbath is the affirmation of the goodness of everything and the dignity with which we are all imbued. It is our chance to reset, not only to rest on the Sabbath, but to reboot the system, to bring everything and everyone back to an even starting place, so that we see that all people are equally valuable in God's eyes, and we start over living in the world made by God by reflecting God's values in our actions towards others. One more story from Chicago. This one came at the end of my childhood, sort of, or the beginning of adulthood, sort of, and of course that means college. I started out college by going to the school in my neighborhood, the University of Chicago. It was known for a lot of things, but at the time it was known for a famous economist on the faculty, Milton Friedman. I never studied economics. But the one thing I learned about Friedman was that he wrote a paper or a book or something about an old adage: there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And I learned that because the university cafeteria, where I ate my midday meal each day, was named for that adage. It was reduced to an acronym, TAN's TAFL, but the whole thing, which is long, was written all along the wall of the cafeteria for us to contemplate as we ate our lunch. It was meant to make us hungrier at the end of lunch than we were at the beginning. As I said, I never studied economics, but I certainly picked up along the way the idea that my worth as a member of society can be measured by how productive or useful I am. Even in that place, the University of Chicago, where the life of the mind is revered above everything, including God, and I'm not kidding, the underlying message was that we were being prepared to take our places as productive members of society. But the spiritual value of our lives is not calculated on spreadsheets, and our abilities and productivity levels are not compared to others to see who is more worthy. Which is not to dispute the old adage. Indeed, I think there is no such thing as a free lunch. I think it's a great adage. If I don't work to make my own lunch, somebody else does. And if I don't pay them for it, then either they're giving it to me out of their own generosity, or I'm stealing it from them. So that makes sense to me. It's important to contribute where we can because we all depend on each other for everything. But that's a different thing entirely. Our abilities are not a measure of our worth. They are instead something quite different. They are examples of the infinite goodness of God, visible signs of the uncountable ways in which God's love and creativity are realized in the world. Our abilities are not held up to each other to be compared, but added to each other to show a glimpse of the goodness of everything and the dignity with which we are all imbued. So use this Sabbath, use every Sabbath to reset, to restore, and rejoice. Repairing the world, which comes tomorrow, is harder at some times in history than at others. Now there are many people in our community living under greater and greater threat of being told they can't do this and can't do that because they are being demonized by those who want to be in control. Today, this Sabbath, we are free to see in the faces of all our neighbors the beautiful image of God, and we are invited to declare liberation to those who are oppressed. Now, when Jesus declares liberation, things happen. What about us? We can declare liberation, but to make liberation real, we have to get up tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and be repairers of broken walls and restorers of ruined neighborhoods.